Welcome back to Amplifying Our Voices. I'm your host, Patty Hayak. Thank you so much for being here today. What happens when an autistic Black man who grew up feeling like an outsider turns that experience into a lifelong mission for justice? In this episode, I sit down with author Paul Ladipo, and we talk about racism, neurodiversity, emotional intelligence, diversity, equity, and inclusion. We explore the hard conversations many people avoid, what it really takes to create equitable workplaces, and the message behind his upcoming book, It Was Never About That, Going Beyond Hate to Dismantle Everyday Racism in America. Let's dive in. Hi, Paul. Thank you so much for meeting with me. I'm so excited to talk to you today.
Yeah, thanks, Patricia. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I like to start off with your upbringing. What was your childhood like, and how did that shape the person that you are today?
Being an autistic kid, I didn't know I was autistic at the time, but I knew something was different, like my trouble socializing, and I was ostracized and bullied a lot. And I always had this sense of fairness. A lot of times neurodivergent people have this ideology of fairness. Fairness is very important to us. I feel bad coming up, being ostracized, and know what it's like to be an outsider. And so I had this idea, like, I want justice. I want the world to be equitable and fair. Fast forward to college and grad school and learning about DEI and inclusion and marginalized populations. Like, yeah, this is a thing. And so I carried those experiences from childhood. I want fairness and equity because I saw people bullied for their race. I saw people being bullied because they were gay or soon to be gay or because of their gender. And so I'm like, no, that's not right. And so that just shaped my personality, the desire for fairness.
Beautiful. Now, how did you end up in the DEI space? Did you go to school for it, or tell me about
so I guess like not an actual degree in DEI, but like I went to school for higher education and student affairs. And so and there I was introduced to DEI. And so I had a graduate assistantship and I was an academic advisor as part of being part of the program. And of course, where we talked about racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, et cetera, et cetera. And then, but then my job was an academic advisor. But then while doing the academic advising, I didn't really like that job, but it helped shape what I wanted. Like my students will know about their stories and like being in conservative Kansas, mostly white Kansas, my students of color, my women students, my LGBTQ plus students were like, yeah, something feels off here. I don't quite feel accepted or just like included here. I stopped caring about what courses they were taking. I can't bluff. Autistics can't bluff when it's like, I don't care about chemistry 251, but I do care what are the systems that are excluding you. And so I did shift until I'm not doing academic advising, but I want to do DEI work.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. I love how you kind of discovered it, and then it just kind of became your purpose because you do so much around DEI, and I love that. Now, can you talk a little bit about what experiences taught you lessons that no degree, no certification, no training ever could?
Yeah, I will say like, especially being neurodivergent and a professional, like I think none of my degrees taught me that bullies and exclusion aren't just in the classroom, but they're also in the office and the C-suite. And I love following people that give advice on surviving the office culture because being a Black man, being an autistic man, it's difficult in professional space. There's racism, there's ableism, but then being both. And I think back to the social cues I missed in jobs. And so it's just like learning that, realizing that like no degree prepared me that a lot of places are very exclusive, even though they say they're inclusive. I went to school, I learned about DEI, but then the workforce is still bad because you have people that get promoted based on social skills or because they're white or because they know so-and-so and all this politics. And it's just, there's so much injustice, not only in the world, but even in the office. And a lot of times in the very place you're working to end injustice. And so like 9 to 5 DEI is very problematic because it's a lot of performative work and smoke and mirrors, and they don't want to hear about how their company can be racist or sexist. And so it's a lot of, so that's something that I learned the hard way.
I can imagine. Now, what keeps you motivated when the progress feels so slow, or even, right now, like it feels like we're going backwards?
Yeah.
DEI work. So what keeps you motivated to keep the work going?
I guess it's realizing that it'd be even worse, and also realize that that's how history is. I know I may not live long enough to see the fruits of my labor or the fruits of your labor. It just has to be done. So I keep going. It doesn't matter whether Trump's disapproval is at 67% or 14%. It's got to be done.
Talk to me a little bit about the current state that we're in and how it has affected your work.
Yeah, so I mentioned how 9 to 5 DI is often performative, smoke and mirrors, but so that's kind of like one thing. Then the other thing is like DI programs being axed. I've transformed to being a digital DI advocate, being an online advocate, being on LinkedIn or Threads or elsewhere, writing a book. It's like I mean, I have a 9 to 5 office job, but it's like, you know what, I'm doing this work one way or another, and so yeah, I don't have to worry about losing my job because
Right.
my regular job has nothing that's not DI related, but it's like I'm just trying to keep advocating. So it needs to
Right.
be done somewhere, some way, somehow.
Exactly. I love that you mentioned that because in some organizations, the culture is like, oh, well, DEI work, it's HR's job. It's a specific inclusion and belonging department's job, but it's not. It's up to everyone that is part of the workforce to keep moving this work forward inside and outside of work. So I just love how passionate you are about it. And I thank you for being so vocal and so out loud. I'm on LinkedIn a lot and I follow people that inspire me. And you're
Yeah.
one of those people because you say the things that need to be said. You say the things that make people uncomfortable. But like these are the conversations that I want to
Yes.
normalize. That's exactly why I
Yeah.
started the podcast. Because
I
I'm like,
can't not do that.
let's
I
call it
can't.
what it is. Let's have a
Yeah.
conversation about it. We are going backwards. Let's
Yeah.
acknowledge that.
Part of that's due to being autistic. We tend to think like, well, we want justice, but we're also blunt. It's not to be cruel. I don't like cruelty. I don't like meanness. I'm just like, let's stop. Let's cut the BS and let's just say what needs to be said, not out
Yes.
of cruelty, but because it needs to be said, and that's how we grow. Years ago, when I used to be a lot less blunt, I used to be really reserved, and I didn't realize at the time that was masking because growing up in the Midwest is very indirect, and I just held it in. But then I remember friends saying, just snatch off the Band-Aid, rip off the Band-Aid, and I'm like, yeah, I'm at the point where I just do it because it needs to be said. And look, I don't intend to offend people, but if it does offend you, I'm just telling the truth. I realize it cost me probably jobs. People looked at my LinkedIn profile, look at my profile all the time, and I get HR specialists and journalists and so from the county of where, and it's like, okay, are you interested? But not gonna choose me because I say the uncomfortable stuff. I know it costs me something because
Right.
I'm vocal, but
Right. No, I love that. Honestly, like those are the type of people that I prefer to communicate with just because or receive their communication because they're direct, they're to the point. And for me, it's just easier to comprehend. There's no hidden message under that I need to
yeah,
decode, especially as English being my second language. Sometimes I struggle with receiving the message, I guess, as its intent. If you can just don't beat around the bush. Just tell me what you need to say, and then I can understand your message better.
yeah.
So for me, I'm always appreciative of that. And then also for me, just growing up as a people pleaser, I never
Hmm.
wanted to hurt anyone's feelings. And so
Exactly.
I would beat around the bush and I was doing
Yeah,
exactly what I don't like being done to me, right? So I'm just like, that stuff just gets exhausting. At the
yeah,
end of the day, we're just wasting time. Just say what
yeah,
you need to say. And it's not
mhm,
personal, right? It's not personal. And
yeah.
that's what I remind myself of.
I remind myself that too, and I try to others as to get them like, look, on LinkedIn, I know people see me as like this lion or whatever. I'm just saying stuff, getting arguments with people. I admit sometimes I say some things that are harsh. I do really care about other people's feelings. I really do. I'm sensitive myself, and so, but it's like problems fester and they get worse if you avoid them, and so it just bugs me when people are like, Morgan Freeman said, if you talk about it, you make it worse. Look, I cut the crap. That's not true. I've researched it. And it's like, so I'm just at the point where like, you know what? There's too much at stake. And so if somebody's unnerved by me talking about white supremacy, that's a you problem, not a me problem. I'm
Right.
not, so that's the mentality I come in with it. So
Now, you do write a lot on LinkedIn, and you not only just talk about diversity, but you also make an emphasis on who holds power.
yeah.
Let's talk about that. Why do you think so many organizations stop at representation and not really address power?
Yeah. My wife explains it best. My wife is white, and she's done her due diligence, and she's indirect mostly. But I remember one day she was telling me as we were traveling somewhere, she's like, "What white man's going to willingly step down and just give up power?" And she's like, "Who's that selfless?" And it's like, and she's right. Even whether you're on the privileged or the marginalized side, most people aren't that selfless just to give up power. You could so whether it's white, whether it's male, whether it's straight, there's power involved, and who willingly wants to give up power because it feels good. There are benefits. There's privilege, not having to realize, not having to consider somebody else's experience, and having to examine your own biases in this. It's a comfort zone. A lot of people buy into the idea of having diverse people present, but when you start talking about, fine, celebrate Black History Month, celebrate Black Panther, or whatever, but when you start talking about systemic racism, white supremacy, it's like, wait a minute, this feels uncomfortable now. It taps into like, okay, how am I contributing to the problem? It becomes more than, hey, how can I enjoy your culture? How can I enjoy your presence? To what do I need to examine in myself that may cause you problems? And that's and people just don't want to. They don't want to see that. They don't want to hear that. I see the same thing all the time when women or male feminists, they start talking about male privilege, or they start talking about why women, mostly women, initiate divorces. They get all in a bunch and all defensive of it. But all the issues or dramas, a lot stem from patriarchy and sexism and entitlement to women's bodies and just men not listening. And so they don't want to hear that, and so all the excuses come up, all the fragility, all the defense mechanisms. And it's the same thing with racism.
Mm-hmm. Going back a little bit to the workforce, we see companies that say they want to be inclusive and all the things. They want to make it a place of belonging. What would that ideal state look like for you from your lens and all the work and research that you've done? What would that look like in real life?
I would think of it not just in terms of numbers. Leaning into quotas is harmful for reasons we don't know get into, but I think also it's people being themselves and how long they stay. You can have Black people, you can have Latino people, you can have gay people. So one, how many are there, but also do they stay? Do they move up? Do they matriculate at all? I like to use the term snow-capped, where like, okay, you have a pyramid, you have all the Black and white people at the bottom, and at the top they're all white, mostly male. So what does your leadership structure look like? How long do people stay? Do they move up at all? What other types of diversity? Do you have neurodivergent people? Are they masking? Are they themselves? Do they feel comfortable outing themselves as having a disability or as autistic or as ADHD or LGBTQ plus, things like that? So I look at those are good barometers.
Mm-hmm. Now, what advice would you have for us to even start having these types of conversations at work? How do we have these conversations? And especially on the ones that are a little bit maybe more invisible, right? Like being neurodivergent. How do we have those conversations?
In my book, I talk about emotional intelligence. So years ago, a friend of mine, we were having a conversation actually on LinkedIn. And so I don't know what prompted it, but he said that emotional intelligence is needed to end racism. And he said this back in 2020, before George Floyd, before everything blew up. Thinking back, he was right. And I included in my book as in my work, emotional intelligence. You look at DEI bans, book bans, the whole CRT scare. White people are the new minority, perceived minority. It's all emotional intelligence, being able to handle tough truths and process that, and they come out okay. If somebody brings up the term white fragility or white supremacy or Black fatigue or whatever, what is it about those terms that trigger you? Those are heavy terms, not for me because I'm so used to talking about it, but for a lot of people, even for people of color, those are like heavy terms. And so, and I see the response. And it's just like, what causes that? What emotional response is that trigger in you? Why does that trigger that in you? And then what can you do to navigate out of it? And I think when you ask those three, if more organizations ask them those three questions, you can get to like a place where, like, okay, now I understand this, now I'm understanding why my emotions in this fear response, and we can have more conversations. And so yeah, because I remember I used to be even more blunt, but like the algorithm suppression plus whatnot. I remember back in 2023 and 2024, I made some posts that went viral, and I got all sorts of trolls, and it just triggered so much. It was ridiculous. But.
Right. God, man, I love that. That needs to be a bumper sticker or something. Emotional intelligence and racism.
Yeah.
I love that so much. For me, I talk a lot about like my own healing journey just because I had zero emotional intelligence because I was taught to suppress my emotions and we don't talk about our feelings. That's in the Latino culture that I grew up. That's what we did. I was even told, stop crying, right? Like I'll give something to cry about. So I'm like, learn, okay, showing our emotions is not good, right? And so for me, my adulthood has been dedicated to working on my inner self, to unlearn all the things that I was raised with, and to really go in and reflect like, okay, why am I triggered by this thing? And I ask myself those questions. If more people did that, people would understand that they're seeing it from the lens of their wounds or from their upbringing or whatever the case is. And so a lot of the times it's not about somebody else, it's about them, right?
Yeah.
So I love that you mentioned that. Now, talk to me about your book. What's
Sure.
the why behind your book?
I'm a huge social media hawk. So I've been on Twitter or X or whatever, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Threads. And it's like, I just see like, based on the arguments, I don't always participate, but like I see the arguments, I see the conflict. And a lot of people, including people of color, they really do not have a great grasp of racism. But a lot of people think they do. And so I think like us being on LinkedIn with other professionals or other advocates, it's very easy to get in a bubble and think that everybody has a good understanding of racism, and that's not the truth. And that was a surprise to me, but that's why I wrote this book. I originally called it Beyond Hate, but then we changed it. Let's go beyond hate. A lot of people think racism is just hate. You're like, I don't like black people, I don't like Latino people, and it's like, well, it's so much more than that. And so many people perpetuate it, even other people of color. And I confront this. One of my chapters. It's not just hating people. It's like, what are the attitudes and the systems that create racial inequity? And so, and I talk in my book, Emotional Intelligence. I talk about how like a lot of people of color perpetuate because they've been listening to racist white people, they kiss up racist white people, they haven't bothered to learn about systemic racism, and they think they understand racism, but like, and they do interpersonal, they understand interpersonal, because even before I became a DI expert, I knew what it's like to be called the N-word, to be followed in stores, but like, I really did not have a good grasp of systemic racism until maybe about like 10, 15 years ago that I really started to learn. And so, and I think a lot of people that don't have a very good understanding of racism, and I wanted to confront this in my book and tackle this like, hey, we can talk about Klans and Nazis and being called slurs and whatnot, but there's so much more to that people aren't getting. And then once we get to that, then we can really fix racism.
Yes. Your book hasn't come out yet. What's the title of the book and when does it come out? And
Yeah.
then
So
get it.
Yeah, so it's called, it was never about that, semicolon, Dismantling Systemic Racism in America. And it comes out October 14th.
What message do you hope people get out of your book?
I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and he was a reviewer of it. And he said, yeah, I was crying, and it made me wrestle with some things. He's a suburban white guy. He's a good heart. He's a dad of 2 girls. He's like, yeah, I was crying. I was wrestling with this, and I want people to wrestle with it. I don't care what your skin color is. You could be candy striped for all I care. It was like, whether you're white, black, Latino, Asian, mixed, indigenous, is like, I want this book to hit you. No matter where you lie on the spectrum, okay, here's the situation. Here's where I fit in. Here's what I can do better. Because this is a collective responsibility. It's not just like, yes, white people have the power, but like people of color have the ability to like advocate for themselves and learn from it and grow and heal and contribute whatever way. I just want this to hit people. And so, and when it hits you, find out what role you fit in ending it. So you could be a digital advocate. You could be a hiring manager that hires more equitably. You could be an HR person that trains people. I don't know. So just find out where you are and then find out where you are in the solution. There we go.
Gosh, I love that. Yeah, man, we've got a long way to go, but even books like yours, they're planting the seeds, and I think that's what's important. One seed is planted here and another seed is planted over here. We're not going to change people, but I think that's how transformation starts, is by having these conversations, reading books like yours. So thank you for that. It's a very brave thing for you to do. Is there anything that you learned, whether that's having to do with racism or DEI or anything that you learned throughout the writing?
Yeah, a lot of well-meaning people, you can still do racist things. And so like, I'm putting the finishing touches on my book, but I know that like in this whatever culture war we're in, a lot of people think like, oh, it's just the GOP that's racist. And it's like, no, I mean, there's white liberals, white Democrats can be racist too. It just shows up differently. And so I think like it could be the next book. I don't know, but like I want to have a bigger conversation. Like, yeah, so the issue with me is not being anti-Republican, it's more anti-Trump, but I don't want Democrats to act like there's no racism in the Democratic Party, because there is. And so there's a reason why a lot of Black and Latino people went to GOP, because they felt like a lot of white Democrats went back on their promises and so, or tokenized them. And so we got to realize that basically learning that racism is not a partisan issue. And so I don't know if that'd be a title of another book, but if I get on the speaking circle, I'll make it clear, hey, this is not necessarily anti-Republican. This is anti-Trump. This is not anti-Republican, but we need to realize that there's racism in our own party, Democratic Party, and that's why people leave the Democratic Party, why they left. And so.
Right. I love that. Thank you. What do you What are the consequences when people with lived experience are repeatedly ignored?
I mean, look at 2020. Look at what happened when George Floyd was murdered. And so, to be clear, I'm not advocating for rioting. And, I lived in Minneapolis when that happened.
Did?
Yeah, I did, and I talk about that in my book. And so there's a lot of misconceptions about Minneapolis. But it's like, at some point, if I let's say that you're a spouse, you married to somebody, and like you told your husband or your partner XYZ problem, and they just did not listen. And at some point, and that's why a lot of women initiated voices, because women have tried to tell their partners, "Hey, XYZ, hey, XYZ," and he wasn't listening and taking it seriously. Then she files for divorce. And he's like, "Wait a minute, what happened?" And it's like, well, she's been telling you for 10, 15, 20 years there's a problem and you didn't listen. And so that divorce was the final straw. And it's like, and I think for a lot of white people, when all that civil unrest happened in 2020, it's like, well, what's going on? And when people have been saying for years prior to that, look, police brutality, systemic racism, police
Right.
brutality, systemic racism, they weren't listening.
Right.
And in fact, MLK even said, writing is the language of the unheard.
I know. It's, yeah, it's hard. It's
Yeah.
hard. We've been saying this. Marginalized people have been preaching these things for years. This is nothing new, right?
Right.
We've experienced it. And it's hard when the person in the highest office is enabling this.
Mm.
Like you said, it's not Democratic or Republican. It's just, how about let's lead with humanity,
Yeah. Yeah.
How about that? Can we start there? Can we agree there? So yeah, for me, it's very difficult even today, being Latino today in America. My thing is like, how do we make people care?
Yeah.
How do we make people care about things that doesn't impact them, that isn't their world?
Mm.
Know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like how? You can't make other people care. So it's like, how do we move forward?
The sad thing is, I don't know if you ever watched the documentary 14th, or no, maybe it was the 13th. No, it was the 13th. It was a documentary on Netflix about the 13th Amendment. And one of the narrators said something that just kind of like hit me square between the eyes. It's like, you have to shock people. So I think, so look at like Emmett Till, look at MLK's assassination, and a lot of people, especially who are not from marginalized backgrounds, it's just like they can't or won't see it until something so big happens. When George Floyd was murdered, I remember there was a brief racial awakening. I remember that summer. When he was murdered, I went on Facebook and just went on a rant. And I just like, I went on a Facebook rant, all with cuss words. I'm not going to repeat them here, but I just went at it. And people responded to that. But then I wasn't the only one who did that. They were like, companies were pledging money to Black businesses. A bunch of DEI positions came out because prior to that, a lot of them were cut because of the pandemic and the recession. Every company had DEI positions open. People were said they were donating money to Black businesses and schools and philanthropies. And I remember at one point, two voice actors, like there were white men who had voiced men of color. They were like, maybe I shouldn't do this anymore. And I'm like, wow. They were making big money in Hollywood doing voice acting for people, as people of color characters for years, and they said, maybe we should stop doing this. And then I remember they were trying to teach systemic racism in schools, but the Trump administration was like, nope. CRT, and then they threw in CRT. It hates white people, even though it wasn't CRT. There was brief, basically I compared it to Reconstruction. So right after the Civil War, Black people made a ton of gains. There were Black politicians even in the South, and like Black people really made huge strides. And then the KKK said, "Nope, we're not doing that." And so like with George Floyd's murder, that kind of started a brief Reconstruction type time. And then all of a sudden, the far right was like, "Nope, we're not doing this."
Right.
And so. But yeah, it takes stuff like that to get people to wake up, like really national tragedies, something just appalling, like Emmett Till's death in the 50s, Emmett Till's death that caused that, and some other things were like the straw that broke the camel's back and started the civil rights movement. And so,
yes, I know. It's just, to me, it's just sad because growing up, I was a very emotional kid, like super emotional. They would call my name and I'd immediately start crying, right? And so for me, empathy is just something that I have. And it's hard for me when I see other people not have any empathy. I'm just like, how could you not? Why does it have to take something that it impacts them for them to care at that point? You know what I mean? Like with the whole like ICE thing, I've struggled with that so much. I used to live in Minneapolis, and when, ICE was there really heavily, and it was very hard for people to just exist there. Okay. Like, and I'm not even talking about immigrants. I'm talking about even just people that aren't immigrants, even like, let's say teachers that are teaching immigrants, and everyone was impacted, and it was a really tough time, and it's still going on. But then people in, let's say, I don't know, a different state, they're just living their lives, not caring, where I'm just like, how could you, I understand it doesn't impact you right now, but at some point, they're going to be in your city. You know what I mean? Or it's going to impact you. So why does it have to take that? That's the thing I just struggle with. I want to make people care, have some empathy. And that's where I get really frustrated. And I know that I can change people, but
you're preaching to the choir, and that's why I talk about self-care. I'm also an empath. I talk about self-care in my book, and it's like, I'm like, find out what you do to recharge, whether it's you take a LinkedIn break or a social media break, or it's you don't check social media after 9 p.m., or it's you treat yourself to ice cream and Netflix or something. For me, I love coffee. So like me in the morning, when my kids or wife are still asleep, I get up and I have coffee with a honey bun. That lights up my world. It's small, but as an introvert, I get to have that first sip of hot coffee with the honey bun or some waffles, and that just like, that feels good. Or if it's at night, if the family's asleep or my wife and kids are out of town, I'm a video gamer and I just play video games at night. So it's like, and that just recharges. It's fun. It's just a reward for me. And so, but I also talk about being able to evaluate relationships. I also talk about I ended a 17-year friendship with somebody over this. And so like I remember it was the 2024 election. I was like, gosh, me and my wife were so worked up emotionally. Like I remember the day before, the day of, and the day after. And it's like, we're nervous. My wife and I are nervous. Election night, kids are asleep, we're watching the election, and as soon as it comes on, Trump is like way ahead of Kamala, and I'm like, oh no. And people are like, oh, it's the Red Mirage. I'm like, no, he's gonna win this. I knew he was gonna win it, because he came bursting out of the gate, like as soon as they televised it. I'm like, crap. Yeah. I was all worked up and just antsy and couldn't sleep well and binge eating. He's a good friend of mine, and so I confided, he checked in on me. He's like, hey, how you doing? And I'm like, I'm just gonna be honest with you, man. He and I have had other conversations, but I told him, like, look, dude, this is not good for us. And it's not just a Republican issue. This dude is not good. And XYZ is like, I don't agree. And yada, yada, yada. I'm like, you know what? I can't be friends with you anymore. I've had enough of this. And you and I have had conversations that you don't want to listen or learn. People have said time and time again, this is not going to be good for us. And turned out I was right. We were right. And I just told him, look, man, I don't hate you or anything, but I can't deal with this. You can't be this. And he's like this devout Christian. I'm like, dude, Christians ideally would be the most compassionate, understanding people, but a lot of times they're not. They're stuck in a bubble. They can't see it, or they refuse to because of who they're listening to. I'm like, you know what? I'm not here to judge or psychoanalyze, but I'm done. And so I put a hard boundary. And I say in the book, like, if that's what you need to do, then do it. Know where your boundaries are, because boundaries are about self-care. And if for empaths like you, Patricia, if it's like, you know what? I protect my mental health. If you want to be selfish and whatever, care about yourself, that's fine. But I don't have to be a part of that.
Right. You know? Yes, that's perfectly said. I do those things because I see how it impacts my mental health, or how it shifts my energy. There's a point where I'm like, okay, I can't see the news right now. Lots of therapy sessions, lots of go outside, getting in nature, bringing some of that joy back. Because it is important for us to take care of ourselves when this current world that we are living in. But thank you for mentioning about that, about those relationships and having those boundaries, because that is so real right now, where people are having to do that, because there's just like, we're going in circles and we're not moving forward. And there are just some things where some people are just not going to agree. That's okay. That is okay.
Going back to the whole, it's not just necessarily a Republican issue. I've had conversations with Republicans. They're either never Trump Republicans or former Trump Republicans, and they get it, and I appreciate that. I'm not Republican. I don't agree with you policy wise, but I appreciate your humanity. You saying that, hey, this is a big problem. This is not okay. Please understand, I'm not this anti-Republican person, but this is an individual less so than the party, more so than the party. Placing boundaries on friendship relationships because a lot of people are telling on themselves. And when this is over, because this will be over at some point. I know this won't last forever, but it's like I want people who are advocates to realize that look, during these past 10 years or whatever, 11 years, people told on themselves. And I hope you were paying attention. And so it's like, because I paid attention. It's different if somebody's had a change of heart and they apologize and made amends. That's fine. But it's like, if they don't, it's like, no, I'm afraid you told on yourself. So protect my mental health. I'm going to leave you alone just because you already showed what you would do and you probably do it again. So it's like, I'm not going to be a situation where I'm continuously triggered or abused, because it's like being in a relationship with a toxic person. That person may not, likely is not going to change. And so it's like, you don't have to be a part of that. That person's going to continue doing what they're doing. And it's like, well, fine. When you do that, I'm okay. I'm good over here. So have a nice life.
How do you, for the people that are interested in having a dialogue without blaming others, how would you suggest that one goes about having those difficult conversations? Let's say someone that did vote for Trump and maybe right now they're regretting it, or maybe they're feeling shameful and they don't want to say anything.
Yeah.
And so they keep quiet. But how do we have those conversations with those types of people that are actually willing to listen and want to have that conversation with us?
That's a really good question. And that's like, it's so complex because I think there are people out there like that, but because of online media and so of the bashing out there, and the people don't want to over because they don't want to be judged or charged. Because I've seen posts on Threads or Facebook where somebody said, hey, but they get tarred and feathered. I'm seeing, like, gosh, this is like
me too. I'm like, you're not helping.
Stoning. One, to the individual that's questioning or that's regretting, like, good for you. I would say that's good for you. But the people that are doing the stoning, it's like, look, and that's why I talk about boundaries. Maybe you're hurt and you have a right to be hurt by what happened. But it's like, some people are like, come on. Like, I'm glad. Thank you for opening up. Good. But some people may genuinely be hurt and not feel less trustful. And that's fine. Like, cause you may feel like, okay, come on, wait a minute. Or just like, never again. And that's all those feelings are valid, but what are you doing with that? So if somebody is remorseful and wants to open up, you may be tempted to bash them, but don't, but also realize your own boundaries and be like, hey, you know what? I can't talk to this person because I've been hurt, and that's okay. Leave the person alone or back out, but like, don't do the stoning because that's, I don't know, it's tempting, really tempting to do that, but that's not going to create the effect that you want. Because I've seen those posts and I'm like, and I get tempted to want to throw stones because it's like we've said over and over and over again, but it's like I have to step away and realize that me doing that's not going to get the effect that I want. And so that's just basically I would say that if you're that type that's come one, come all, or that's like I forgive you, then lean into that conversation. If you're not, or you're not ready, then don't make yourself do it. You can feel free to step away. You don't even have to respond to the post. You can delete the post or whatever. Use your settings. Or in person, was like, hey, I'm not ready to have this conversation yet. That's fine. But just, don't be afraid to walk away. But like, hey, I'm not ready to talk about this at this time. Because then you end up saying things that you regret. You can't take back.
Right. Exactly. Right. And we don't want to cause more damage. We don't want to engage in behavior that we're already judging or criticizing. Come on. We can't do that. So thank you for that. Oh man, I have so many questions for you. What would you say to people who say, I don't see color or there's no racism in America?
I would ask, what do you mean by that? You supposed about that topic, and then I've had people say, hey, what I mean by that is like I see color, but you're more than a color, which is great. But to somebody that thinks literally like an autistic, or to somebody that has had a history of racism, or both, when you say that, it's like they take that at face value, or they take that only at what you said, and it's like, wait a minute here. And so it's fine to say, hey, you're more than your ethnicity or race or skin color, which is true, but like, don't overcompensate by trying to say you don't see color, because I feel like that's an overcompensation for something. Either I don't want to talk about racism, I don't know how to talk about racism, I don't want to be seen as racist, and so like, well, why do you feel the need to say that? Right.
Yes. What does healthy allyship look like in practice?
I feel that it's not leaning too hard on relationships. The classic example is somebody like, oh, I live in a Black neighborhood, or I have Black friends, or I have a Black wife, or, and my kids are half Latino, and it's like, well, that's great, but like, what are you learning? What are you doing? Because like, a white woman can have a black man as a like. I've seen cases where like a white woman has a black husband and biracial kids, but she may support Trump or she may criticize BLM or like you care about the individual ideally, but it's like, are you aware of what that individual and other individuals that share that identity experience? And so it's like, so I think true allyship is more realizing that don't lean too hard on your relationships. Cause it's like, if I care about women's rights, I don't declare myself a woman ally, but it's like, yeah, I aspire to be one, but it's like, if I'm like, oh, I have a wife, I must be an ally. Or I have one of my best friends is a woman, that must be an ally. It's like, well, that's leaning too hard on relationships. You can have intimate friendships or partnerships with somebody of an identity and still have a lot of problems, And so.
Yeah. Thank you for that. What in your book do you think readers will resist the most?
Man, that's going to be a number of. Resist the most. I think a lot of people will resist when I talk about white supremacy. I think maybe even the premise of the book. In the book, I talk about white supremacy is not just hate groups. It's also about social dominance and allocating resources. And I think that'll be a cause of resistance. I do think in my chapter about people of color perpetuating racism, like not against white people, but against like so people like Larry Elder and a lot of prominent Black GOP people who say there's no systemic racism. That's I know if it does well, that's going to cause a lot of problems. I'm going to piss a lot of people off with that internalized racism, because I've had arguments with people on LinkedIn and elsewhere with Black MAGA people. And I'm like, well, I'm sorry, you're part of this too, because you're kissing up to people who don't care about you either. And so I think that will push buttons. What else? Oh, I spent a chapter talking about Trump and how his toxic behaviors, behaviors resemble toxic partners, because like the manipulation, the gaslighting, the projection, and how he manipulated people into following him. So talking about that, and then talking about how he used racist dog whistles from the 1920s, like when the Klan spoke against Jews, Asians, the Irish, and it's the same rhetoric, just different group. That's going to push a lot of buttons. The whole damn book, Patricia, is it's going to be if it does well. If it does well, I can. If it does really well, I can promise you, it's just going to tick a lot of people off. And like, I don't care. Well, I do care, but it's like that's not. I don't have. They can't change me. I said what I said. So
Right. Right. And you're not responsible for everyone else's feelings. So you're saying the things that need to be said, which again, like I said, it's very brave of you, and I appreciate you doing the work that you do. What if you could challenge every listener with one uncomfortable question, what would it be?
Ooh, that's a really good question. If I could challenge the listener with one uncomfortable question, what would it be? I guess, what would be your motivation for being complacent? Assuming that you're the person that just kind of feels like meh or complicit in it, or what motivates you to stay silent about it when all this is going on? And I would especially aim this question to like C-suite leaders, executive leaders, hiring managers, all the people that look at my profile but don't like say, hey, would you like to work for us? Because I know I'm good at what I do. I know I could bring a lot to an organization, but my big mouth, companies don't want, people have told me on the side, like companies don't want truth tellers. And that's the harsh reality. And so I'm like, you look at my profile 3 times a week, I see this, I get notifications about this, but you don't contact me about anything. And so it's like, what motivates you to be silent? Are you motivated by a paycheck? You don't want to get chewed out? Because I love true white allies, and I'm not ever going to compare their experiences to those of color. I'm not going to say they experience what Black and Latina and Indian people and indigenous people experience, but I see them get gaslit. I see them get threats from racist white people. And so I see it on Facebook and threads. And so like the white people that are really in the trenches and they get garbage and they get heat garbage. And so it's like, yeah, do you fear being persecuted? Do you fear losing your job? Or do you have a subtle fear of losing control too? You're just not as racist as other people are?
Right. That's great. Thank you. Now, what would you say to someone who, okay, so like I understand that we're not asking everyone to be like an activist, right? We're not asking everyone to shout it out in public, because I understand not everyone might feel comfortable with. But what would you say to someone who wants to make an impact, but they don't want to be so out loud about it? How can they make an impact to move things forward, to end racism?
It could be just educating yourself, being aware, because knowledge is power. It sounds cliche, but it really is. Having a solid knowledge base, it makes you confident, it makes you aware of what's going on so you don't make the same mistakes. So start with that. But then I was like, if you're in a position of leadership, which is why I'm on LinkedIn in the first place, or I started advocate on LinkedIn, if you're an HR person, if you're a hiring manager, if you're a C-suite executive, you don't have to be out in the streets, but you can be like, okay, what are our hiring practices? Do we have policies that discriminate against Black women's hair? What heritage months do we acknowledge? Do we have an environment where neurodivergent people can feel like they can stemming behavior, whatever? Can they do that? Can they say on the application, yes, I have a disability? How do we treat people that have employment gaps? Women, people of color, neurodivergent people make up a disproportionate amount of employment gaps. They make a bit amount of people that are unemployed, underemployed, or just have employment gaps because of sexism, racism, ableism, caring for family members, sick family members. That is a big burden for women. And in some cultures, it's expected that we take care of our elderly. We don't throw our sick parents in a nursing home. We take care of them. And so, right. That causes employment gaps. And so, look at your hiring policies. How do you treat people with employment gaps? What heritage months do you honor? Do you have any hair, clothing, discriminatory attitudes? Like if somebody uses their name, do they have to anglicize their name to get a call? Because we all know that ethnic sounding names get fewer calls. And so things like that.
Thank you. What conversation do you hope society will be having in 10 years from now that we're not having today?
You ask what do I hope or what do I think will happen?
Well, either one.
In my book, the central question is what went wrong, what happened? Because I see people asking this now, and I'm hoping 10 years from now, people will this is what went wrong. Because one, they'll know what went wrong, but also that will change the culture in a way that people call it out. Because and I hate using this as a comparison, but think about World War II Germany, and so all the atrocities that were committed. That after that was over, the culture in Germany changed, and that's why Germans are more blunt. They call things out because it's so many people were silent. They were complicit when all those horrible things happened. It got to where okay, now it's let's call things out. So I hope that in 10 years from now, or 15 years from now, the culture will be changed to where more people will be calling things out. One, they'll know what happened, but also they'll call things out. So this doesn't get repeated again because there'll be more people like Trump because there'll always be megalomaniacs who want to take control and who want to harm people,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you. What gives you hope?
What gives me hope is that nothing lasts forever. I mean, so on one hand, it's a good thing, nothing good lasts forever, but also nothing bad lasts forever. It's something, and we evolve as a society. We have to. We can't do the same things that we did in 1951 and 1861. I know there are people that want to go back to the 50s. I'm like, okay, fine. Send us all back to the 50s. That's not going to work because it's if 1950s is done. It'd be if me, my heyday was the 2000s. It's well, yeah, let's go back to 2009. It's we can try to do that, but we just look stupid because in 2009 is gone. I mean, so I just know that you can try to send us back to the 50s or to the whatever, but it's that just can't last. We'll evolve one way. I think that we'll evolve kicking and screaming. A good friend of mine, the same one who reviewed my book, he said, yeah, I think America hasn't hit rock bottom yet, and I think this will make America hit rock bottom. And he compared it to an addict who hits rock bottom, and then they realize, oh, I got to grow up. I got to change. And so I think this will make America hit rock bottom, and then we'll finally grow up. We'll still have our problems, but I think this will be something that America will okay, let's grow up. Let's have the conversations. Let's put policies in place. Let's establish a culture of saying the hard things that Germany had to find out for itself, because that's when Germany hit rock bottom, World War II.
Beautifully said. Thank you. And we can end it on this. What do you want your legacy to be?
I guess I want my legacy to be I grew up poor. I grew up in a dysfunctional family, grew up autistic. I came from nothing. I want my legacy to be look, I came from nothing, but I had a purpose and I had a passion and I let nothing stop me. And I used that for good. I saw injustice. I experienced injustice and was you know what? I used it to turn my life around, but other people's lives around.
Beautiful. Thank you, Paul. Thank you again for all the work that you do. Thank you for being so vocal. Thank you for being so honest. And thank you for just being a real one. I love that. You inspire me to be more vocal and to use my voice. So thank you, Paul, for inspiring me.
Yeah, that means a lot.
Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, follow, and share this with someone who might need it. Stay tuned for the next one.